Hello and welcome to a brand new season, but the same old shoddy team of the Forza Italian Football Podcast. Just want to start things off really.
Hello and
by
welcome to a brand new.
There's the first mistake of the season, guys. But just to start things off, I want to apologise in advance for Nicholas Carroll's audio quality because I'm not sure if he'll actually last the duration of this podcast. But Nick, welcome back, and maybe just explain to people why your internet is so terrible.
I'm very excited to be talking to you, Rich. But it's good to be back. It's been an excruciatingly long off season, but happy to be talking Serie A once again. As mentioned, I am actually in Italy, in Catania at the moment, and yeah, internet is kind of dial-up speeds, it seems. So I am definitely on struggle street, but if I do drop out, that's the reason. So please do continue on without me if need be.
That last 30 seconds was actually the best bit of audio we've had from you all night so far. So the sound is good. Also returning for fresh foot. Right, Nick, don't speak over me because your audio's bad enough. It just sounds like a robot. And it's just rude, to be honest. Also returning fresh for the new season is Luca Gunby. Luca, how's everything? I saw you recently enough over here in Dublin for the Sampdoria game. How's everything since then?
Yeah, everything's fine. Just sort of back to the usual rhythm of working, and looking forward to a season that should be a bit more interesting and spurred on from my most recent experience of live football at Bohemians Bray, a cracking goalless draw. One
of the worst matches I've been to this season, I should add. You picked a bad time to go to a Bray game. But anyway, people aren't tuning in to hear about League of Ireland. People over here don't even care about that. Let's talk Serie A. Let's look ahead to the new season. And I suppose it makes sense to start with the Serie A champions, Juventus. Luke, I'll stick with you just so Nick's internet can have a rest and maybe be ready for when I do speak to him. But is this the toughest title defence they've had yet?
You would assume so, in that losing a key player in Bonucci to a direct rival is not going to really get their morale going. It's not really putting out the sign that they're this untouchable team at the top. And then they lost the Super Cup, they almost rescued it. And then you kind of think, oh, typical Juventus, they're back there leveling games at the end. But then they conceded a goal right at the end there again. And it just seems a bit odd. They seem to lack a kind of player in the midfield that they perhaps need, someone who can just sort of control games, dominate from midfield. And it does seem a lot more open this year in Serie A, which is a good thing, because it was starting to get somewhat dull with Juventus winning all the time, no matter how good a team they were. But also the potential hangover of losing in that Champions League final, that one big chance perhaps for Buffon to get that's something that could be an issue. Perhaps you would assume he's being on the way out. Chesney's there, so it's going to have to be a sort of balancing goal, and perhaps this is kind of the end of an era there for Juve.
Yeah, Nick, I'll bring you in. Luca touched on it. Leonardo Bonucci has left and he's gone to AC Milan. How big of a loss will he be? Because we kind of saw that the BBC was no more really with the change to a 4-2-3-1. But of those defenders, it was Barzagli who was expected to be moved on first. So how big of a loss is Bonucci to Juve?
To be honest, I don't think you could have taken another player out of that team and made as much of a difference as taking Bonucci is. I think he was that much part of that team and of that team for an amount of years now. He's been central to that BBC, as you mentioned. Juve's strength, as we all know, has been the defence, and they've always built a strong defence, irrelevant of what's been going on in midfield and attack. And now they've completely gutted that defence, taken arguably the most important play in terms of a leader in that defence, and that's it. That's their biggest strength has been taken away. And going into this season, for the first time, you're looking at the defence and you're thinking, actually, you might not have the best defence in Serie A anymore, which is...
Yeah, Nick, I'll just jump in and cut you off there. The audio is getting a bit shaky. I'll throw it over to Luca. They've brought in Mattia De Sciglio, to kind of reinforce that defence. And obviously they've got Rugani there ready to come through. Mattia Caldara will go back at the end of this season. But their defence is a bit shaky this year, isn't it?
Yeah, De Sciglio wouldn't have been sort of what the Juve fans were clamouring for. It's just kind of a transfer of convenience, and he's not really done much recently. He was touted for great things when he was younger, but then he's just sort of been average at Milan. And yeah, that kind of everything that Bonucci brought will just be a great miss to them. That sort of ball playing defender, the ability to pass the ball at a few defenders better than that. Then even perhaps there might be some worries that Chiellini could sort of be on the wane soon. I think there was some talk of him having a bit of an issue with Allegri after the Supercoppa final. There's just some footage of them having a few words on touch lines. That's probably just, it's probably just drawing too much from just average kind of conversations you're always going to get between people. But that kind of defence isn't perhaps what you would have expected of Juve going into the season, with Bonucci just coming out of nowhere, leaving the team like that. It's just perhaps as well, that's just could be a huge mental thing as well. And there's going to be a lot more pressure on the likes of Rugani to step up, and you would assume he's good enough, but it's just kind of adapting to this new future now for that team, because he was, as Nick was saying, probably the core and the kind of heartbeat of that team.
Yeah, well, they've also brought in, moving up the pitch, Federico Bernardeschi from Fiorentina and Douglas Costa. Nick, how do you think they'll get on? I'm not too convinced about Bernardeschi myself, but I think Costa could be a really good addition. Do you think they'll settle in well in Turin?
I'm with Bernardeschi. I'm convinced. I guess we've all seen capability, but I guess consistency is the biggest thing. Playing squad, with respect to playing with. Yeah, it's unknown for me. I hope he does well. I'd like to see him kind of develop into something a lot better and get up to the next level. But I have my doubts. But certainly Douglas Costa, I think that's the most exciting thing for you. I was actually at the game against Tottenham, and then in the Supercoppa when he came on, he made such a big difference, provided so much energy and options down the flank. So I think he'll be one of their standouts, if not their biggest standout this season. And I'd be really excited to see what kind of combination he can draw and build with Paulo Dybala.
Nick, I'll stick with you because your audio seems to have warmed up a little bit as that answer went on. The real talk of the summer this year has been AC Milan and their free spending in the transfer market. Is it too much to expect a serious title challenge from them this year, given the amount of change that's taken place there?
I think so. I don't think it's a realistic goal for the first season. Maybe we can kind of look at it. This is a team that hasn't been playing repeating football, not even general, so we can't. I don't think anyone should expect Montella to be able to work the magic and have this team.
All right, Nick, you're cutting off again. I'm going to throw it over to Luca. We'll give you one more chance a bit, and then if not, we'll just let you go. Me and Luca will take it on from here. Luca, they've signed a lot of players. Frank Kessie, Andrea Conte, Andre Silva, Lucas Biglia, Bonucci, as we mentioned. There's probably more there. But which of these do you think has the potential to be the most exciting or the most important player?
It's well, I think like Bonucci, we've been speaking about him already. That kind of just goes without saying, especially coming from a direct rival. But then other than him, I think Frank Kessie was certainly, like, he could do very well there. He proved at Atalanta that he's capable. He scores a few goals. He's strong. He's physical. He gets around the pitch. He's got good positioning. I think Kessie could certainly be one to keep an eye on. And then again, Çalhanoğlu, which is a kind of a signing that sort of seemed to come out from nowhere in a way. He was kind of a player who's been off on a ban. He'll have something to prove, and he's shown already that he's a very technically gifted player. He's famous for his free kicks, but I think he can do a lot more than that. He's just a very good player, can pick a pass, and then I think he'll be an interesting player to see in Serie A, because when he was at Leverkusen, he always looked quite an interesting prospect, and he wasn't necessarily the kind of player you necessarily expect to see wind up at a Serie A club. But then he's had about 6 months off now, and he'll determined to prove himself. He should be fresh, so it'll be quite interesting to see what kind of impact he could have. I think perhaps they still want to bring in a striker, but other than that, I think they've certainly brought in a lot of good players. I think it's perhaps a bit too early for them to be challenging for the title. It's not kind of always the done thing in Serie A, where perhaps in the Premier League people get over excited about signings and then just think, oh, we've got these, it'll take a while to click. But they've certainly brought in a lot of these players, and they should be moving on up.
Yeah, I think Çalhanoğlu is one of the better additions they've brought in going forward, because they've made additions to defence and midfield. But I don't know if you can hear the dog crying in the background there. This is a disaster of a first podcast, but we'll crack on with it anyway. Personally, I think Andrea Conti is a huge addition to that team. He is such an upgrade on De Sciglio, and having seen him play regularly last year, I think he's probably one of the better fullbacks in Europe at the moment, and he's got the potential to just explode in the next couple of seasons. But yeah, Gianluigi Donnarumma was linked with a move away earlier in the summer. But Luca, how important is it that he has stayed at the San Siro?
Yeah, it's key, because when there was all this talk of him leaving, it was so negative, the atmosphere about Milan. It was like all this sort of kind of progress of giving this young player a chance, and he just betrayed them. And then he eventually stayed. They brought in all these signings, and that kind of just changed the whole atmosphere around. Perhaps the best signing will turn out to be his brother as well, Antonio Donnarumma, just being brought in to keep him happy. I don't know. I could imagine if I was a Milan director, it'd be kind of tempting to just put Antonio in ahead of Gianluigi for a couple of games, just to have a few words with him after he said he was off. But yeah, it is vital. It was just the atmosphere was so negative at that club when he was bound to leave, and it would have been quite a difficult task for them to find a goalkeeper to replace him. Just to keep him, it's just spared the whole team. It's kind of galvanised everyone, and he's still so young that he's going to offer them so much going forwards, and he should only get better.
All right. Quickly, out of the two Milan clubs, who do you think finishes higher, AC or Inter?
I would assume it'd be Milan, but I don't think Inter should be underrated, but just because they've not been as active. They haven't perhaps got the kind of the star quality of Milan, which I think will propel Milan, but I think it'll be quite close fair. I could see Milan probably finishing third and into fourth. That seems completely feasible to me.
Nick, we'll try to bring you back in, because we're going to move on to Inter, and everyone knows by now that you are the go-to guy when it comes to Inter talk. It's been a quiet summer by their standards, but I actually think that might be a good thing. What are your thoughts?
It's been probably the best summer for me as an Inter fan, because there's no ad hoc ridiculous in quite a few seasons. There's some thought to purchases that are going on, so that's always nice. It's clear that they're not looking so short term anymore, which is good. So I'm quite happy for them. I don't think Inter should be looking to win the title next season. That's just, I think maybe that's where they've gone wrong. They've been trying to look for too much too soon. They need to build that team, and I think Luciano Spalletti is someone who can build. So there's been some smart purchases, and for once they've actually bought a wide defender. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. We see Yuto Nagatomo or Christian Ansaldi running down the left. It's it's incredible. So Inter, I think Inter fans have a lot of reasons to be quietly confident this season. I don't think, as flowing from what Luca said, I think Milan favourites to probably finish above them, but I think a lot of Nerazzurri fans will have a bit of quiet confidence about them.
Just a question. Has Andrea Ranocchia gone back to Inter this summer?
Yes. We're all very excited.
Your problems are solved, Nick. You can do whatever job you want them to do.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, you've just kind of spoken to the main weakness that still exists in centre back now. Miranda is there by himself, with the options being Andrea Ranocchia,
Skriniar.
or Milan Skriniar from Sampdoria. So Skriniar obviously has shown some potential, but I'm not sure he's that kind of world-class centre back that Inter is probably looking for or needs.
What's happened with your boy, Trent Sainsbury?
Trent's he's gone back. Doesn't look like he's going to be there for too long, so I think he might end up in some second division club in Europe, in Germany or Belgium or something like that, but not too sure just yet. Side note, I did get a nice signed jersey from Sainsbury. That's a nice little memento from his 21 minute or was 19 minutes playing with the Nerazzurri shirt. Very exciting. Very exciting.
I'm happy for you, Nick. Sincerely, I am.
Thanks.
And just get your thoughts on that as well. Who do you think would finish higher out of Milan or Inter this season? Because it's going to be an interesting little battle they have going on.
Yeah, I think same as Luke, have the stars and possibly the quality that they should finish above Inter. But I think it will be relatively close. For me, I'm sure you'll go through the predictions later, but I think after the first two clubs, it'll be quite a close run for the remaining Champions League positions.
Yeah, well, one of the first two clubs that I'm sure you're referring to there are Napoli. And I don't know about you both. I said at the end of last season, and I'm sticking by it, that this is the year that Napoli will actually win the Scudetto. Juventus are a bit weakened, even more so than I expected them to be at the beginning of the summer. But Napoli have just kept all of their key players there, which they didn't do last season, obviously, with Higuain leaving. And they brought in Adam Unas as well from Bordeaux. So they look quite good. They've been quietly impressive in pre-season. Luca, how do you rate their chances this year? Can they finally stop Juve's dominance?
I think they'd be my... If anyone's going to stop Juve, it's Napoli for me. I wouldn't say that they are going to. I don't think they necessarily will, like you said. But I think if it's anyone, it's them, and it'll be very tight. I think the players kind of have this kind of sense about them that it could be their year. I think they all had this kind of pact to come off pre-season holidays early and get to work before they were necessarily expected to, because they think that this could be their year. And if they keep everyone fit, which they perhaps didn't last year with Milik getting injured so early on, even though that kind of didn't really have that much of an impact on them, I think they could really, really do it. I think Sarri has kind of shown that he's probably at the moment the best kind of coach in Serie A. He's getting the most out of these players. They're not necessarily spending huge amounts of money, but Unas seems an exciting young player. I haven't really seen much of him. He seems another option in this kind of attack, which can do so much. And then even some of the stuff they've done in pre-season, they already seem to be this kind of well-oiled machine. They can play from the back and get the ball straight up the pitch, with everyone kind of getting a few touches on and the scoring goals. It's just perhaps the defence and the goalkeeper will still be kind of the Achilles heel for that team. But with the strength of that attack and how well coached they are, if they really do play to their levels, it's going to, I think, be them who stops Juve. And this does look like the year. It won't be easy, but I think they will give it a real go this year. It's just perhaps also Champions League could be a distraction for them.
Yeah, over the summer I've fallen in love with Napoli a little bit. Luca, when you were over here, we were speaking about it a little bit, but I saw videos of Maurizio Sarri's training sessions and how he uses a drone to monitor the players' positioning, and he kind of drags them around, and it kind of feeds into why when they move forward in these free-flowing attacks, everyone just knows exactly where they're supposed to be. There was another video I tweeted out, I retweeted it yesterday, about their set pieces and how they exploit the man marking system. And it's just remarkable. Head over to my Twitter and try and find that, because it's really worth watching. The attention to detail that Sarri has is amazing. And I think Napoli and Sarri definitely do deserve to win a title. And I'm confident that this can be their year. Nick, have you any thoughts on Napoli yourself? I know you were a big fan of theirs come the last few months of last season as well.
Yeah, I think any neutral football fans or Serie A fans would love to watch Napoli play. They're an exciting team. And to be honest, I'm kind of with you on this, Conor. I do think that they can actually get Juventus this season. I think obviously the Bianconeri should rightly be favourites for the Scudetto, but I don't know. I feel like everything's kind of coming together really well for them. They had a longer than usual camp over the off season. And as you mentioned, they've kept that team together. And if this team's growing combinations more and more, they've got those young players that are developing more. There's just so much to be excited about. And I don't know. Luca mentioned the Champions League. And while that could be a distraction, part of me also thinks that Juventus is probably more concerned about the Champions League than Napoli. So I think Juve, that still remains their one kind of goal that they've just been missing out on. So if Juve remains in it, that could possibly take away their focus. And if Napoli can stay consistent as they did towards the end of last season, then I don't know. I think they can be a more consistent team looking at that squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Juventus are kind of starting to remind me of Chelsea about 10 years ago when they had won the Premier League a couple of times and they just became obsessed with the Champions League. And I kind of think Juventus are falling into that trap themselves, and they might kind of take their eye off the ball in Serie A this year. Because let's be honest, they've won it 6 times in a row. They're bound to slip up sooner or later. Moving on to a team that finished above Napoli remarkably last season. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but Roma finished second, if I remember correctly. But they've just been a bit of a supermarket this summer. Rudiger's gone, Salah's gone, Paredes is gone, Totti obviously retired. It's going to be a difficult season for Di Francesco's first year in charge at the Stadio Olimpico. Luca, what happens this year with Roma?
Yeah, I think it was kind of always set up to be difficult for them with Totti going. That is kind of the definitive end of an era thing with Roma. They're going to have to rebuild, and I suppose with Monchi in, like, that's perhaps the ideal man to do that. And they do seem to kind of be backing him in, but sort of perversely by selling players. They're willing to let their stars go and bring all this faith into young players. They've got this Turkish striker in Cengiz Ünder, like perhaps not that many people know about him in Italy, so there'll be a lot of pressure on him. But Di Francesco at Sassuolo kind of made his name with getting the most out of these young players and sort of having kind of a real system that he stuck to, this kind of principles kind of as a manager. I think it would definitely be tough for them. They got smashed by Celta Vigo just yesterday, I think, in pre-season, which doesn't necessarily mean that much, but I think it will be very much a kind of rebuilding year. They've still got this stadium hanging over them, but it will be tough. I think eventually perhaps the Monchi backing him and sort of having this kind of commitment to letting players go and then reinvesting in young players who then kind of cyclically go will eventually pay off, as it did with Sevilla. It's just, it looks quite tough this year. I don't really see them necessarily challenging for the Scudetto at all, but I think they will be up there and getting into Europe, and it's just might be a bit more difficult, and I think there will be some patience needed, which isn't necessarily afforded to managers in such a kind of environment as at Roma, like when they previously tried to rebuild with Luis Enrique and all that kind of stuff, which failed. So it'll be interesting. It'll be difficult for them, but I think slowly they'll get back to where they want to be.
Nick, what do you think for Roma's chances this season? Do they risk falling out of the top 4 of the Champions League places?
I think so, yeah. It's difficult, and here, and I'll probably say this a lot across the season, but Di Francesco needs some time there, and that could very well mean 1 or 2 seasons to almost restart that squad. It is very much a new era for Roma, so he needs time to develop, and maybe it might very well mean that they drop out of the Champions League for a season, which, of course, financially, it's not going to be, these things happens as we've seen with Inter and Milan in recent seasons. To this season, I honestly, I think it's going to be a race between Roma, Inter for the final Champions League position. I personally see Inter getting the 4th spot. I just think, and particularly, in the attacking side, you mentioned Mohamed Salah, that combination, not only in terms of what he was providing, but what he was doing for Edin Dzeko. So if Edin Dzeko firstly doesn't have that provider for him, which I think it was the biggest combination in terms of goals scored last season. But not only that, but if his goals dry up again, then we could go back to a season before last where, we all probably remember how the kind of form that Dzeko was providing week in, week out, which was not great. So it's a huge loss. The defence is questionable. Obviously, the positive that now it looks like Manolas will stay, which would have put them 100% in my mind out of the running for the Champions League. But yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult one. If they could get 4th spot, I think that's a huge win for Roma and Di Francesco.
All right, that'll do with going through club by club at the top then. Coming up from Serie B, Benevento, Spal and Hellas Verona are back. How are they going to get on, Luca? You've obviously, maybe not last season, but previously seen a fair bit of Hellas Verona. Happy to have them and the others in Serie A?
Yeah, I think Benevento, interesting. Have another Southern team and another team going in for their first go in the division. I think Verona could be quite an odd team. They've got lots of these experienced players, Pazzini, Cerci, Caceres has come in, so they'll have to really kind of rely on them. Otherwise, it's mostly the team from Serie B, which wasn't really setting Serie B alight, but they perhaps will also benefit from they've managed to get the Cassano inevitable saga out of the way before the season. That's just done now. He's gone. I think Spal could be a side to watch. They've made quite a few signings. They've got Poloski in, who has previously shown he's good at that level with Chievo, and Federico Viviani was sort of touted to do quite a lot when he was at Roma when he's younger, but hasn't quite worked out. But he's still shown himself to be a good player, and he can score a few from free kicks. Whereas Benevento, perhaps they'll sort of aim to follow the example set by Crotone last year, where they kind of just keep it as it is, try not to make too many changes with moving up to top flight. They're not bringing in loads of well-known players or anything like that, but they just sort of keep a team together and just see what they can do without necessarily panicking and sort of trying to overreach themselves in the transfer market. They might be able to have a chance. It looks like it'll be tough for them for just with how small a club they are, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And there's quite a few interesting teams who've come up.
All right, then we'll move on to our own little predictions then for the season. We've kind of been putting these together for the side anyway. So it makes sense to start with the top 4 in order. I've gone for Napoli, Juventus, Inter and Milan. Nick, what are yours?
Napoli, Juventus, the switch around for me.
Nick, I think this might be the end of you. I just about got some of that. Luca, top 4 predictions. Luca, your mic.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to unmute it. Yeah, Juve, Napoli, Milan, Inter.
You have to spoil everyone's fun by going for Juve to win it again, don't you, Luca? Cheers.
Well, it's not because it's what I want, but it's because I'd rather the Napoli won it as well. I think that makes it less likely to happen.
That's fair enough. I can accept that. And to be relegated, then I've gone for Spal and Benevento, unfortunately, and then I went for Genoa. Look, I know you didn't agree with this, but my reasoning is there's probably about 8 teams that could just randomly end up down there because I don't think the quality is that much different in the bottom half of the table. And I think we saw last season that Genoa nearly got sucked into it. So I think they might fall into that trap again this season. And their city rival Sampdoria could be in a bit of trouble as well, as I'm sure you will be worrying about. But who have you gone Who have you tipped for relegation?
I would say Crotone after their miracle probably aren't going to be able to do it again. I think Cagliari could perhaps struggle, and Benevento. But like you said, there's kind of a lot of teams that aren't really going to be aiming for much more than to stay up, and it is quite easy for them to get dragged down. Perhaps even someone like Sassuolo, who's been doing so well, could be looking over their shoulder next year.
Yeah, and obviously losing Di Francesco, Pellegrini, and the Frail all to Roma will be a bit problematic for Sassuolo. Nick has sent his predictions for relegation through, and he has gone with Atalanta because he's an idiot, Benevento and Spal, but he's corrected himself and put Crotone in instead of Atalanta, which...
He has a point, though. Atalanta could very well struggle, do you not think?
I did at the start of the summer, but they've only lost Conte and Kessie, and they've brought in enough players to handle it. I can see them finishing top half easily enough this season, but we won't get into that now. Who else? What other predictions have we got? Okay, top goal scorer. I'm going boring here with Gonzalo Higuain. Luca?
A bit boring. Follow you.
Yeah, Nick's gone for Dries Mertens, which would be amazing if he could repeat the form he showed last year. And then player to watch. Try not to pick an obvious one. I've gone for Lucas Torreira from Samp. He was impressive last season. I thought he was brilliant in Dublin against Manchester United. And I think they'll struggle this year. So kind of a midfielder like him will kind of stand out. Nick has gone for Douglas Costa because he's boring. Luca, what are your thoughts?
I think Çalhanoğlu could be a lot of fun.
And then I guess, what do you want to see from your club? Samp, I'm sure people know. They'll struggle, but what are you expecting from them, or what are you hoping from them this year?
I think they'll struggle quite a bit this year. I think I'd hope they sign a striker, because at the moment they haven't really got one. It's just got Quagliarella and Bonazzoli, but I'd quite like to see Bonazzoli get a few games. He won the Player of the Tournament award when he was into the Viareggio Cup, and he was touted for some sort of progress and to be one of the better young Italian strikers. He was off on loan last year, so I'd like to see them give him a bit of a chance. And then otherwise I'd like to see them keep Schick, because I think he could be a great signing wherever he ends up, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen now. But I think they'll just toddle along. I'm not really hoping for much, just not to go down. I was getting one striker and then not sell anyone who's remotely good as soon as they get the chances. They have a bit of a tendency to do at the moment.
You should get big Marco Borriello in. He'll keep you up safely, like he will do with Cagliari this year. Nick wants for Inter to keep the same coach for more than 3 months, which I think might be asking for a little bit too much, Nick. And then last one of these quick questions, and difficult to do by the nature of it, but Atalanta were a shock last year. We've had shocks from Sassuolo before. If you were to predict anything to be a surprise in Serie A this year, what do you think?
I think Spal could surprise some people. Two straight promotions, feel good. Kind of a historic little club. Everyone in Ferrara's happy. They've made a few shrewd signings, it seems. I think they could do something, and I think people will be quite happy to get behind them. Nick's
gone for the South to rise and Crotone and Benevento both to survive. Optimistic, I'm sure, but let's hope so, because it's nice having a bit of diversity in Serie A. Obviously, I predict Atalanta to qualify for the Champions League, but enough on that. That brings our first podcast of the season to an end. Apologies again about the sound quality and the problems with Nick and my own idiocy, but Luca was probably the most professional throughout until the end with the microphone issue. But we've had a fair few new patrons over on patreon.com/Forza Italian Football over the summer. So thank you very much for all of those who have signed up. If you aren't already signed up and you like what we do, then head over, as I said, to patreon.com/Forza Italian Football and donate as little as you can or as much as you can, depending on how much you like us and how much you can afford to give us. Check out the site, ForzaItalianFootball.com. We've got season previews of all the top 7 clubs coming up in the next couple of days. There'll be some videos from Nick and Vieri to go along with those, and top 5 players to look out for this season, all that sort of thing. You can follow us on Twitter at Serie A FFC, Facebook and Instagram at Forza Italian Football. I'm on Twitter at Concalcio. Nick is at Nick Z Carroll. Luca is at Gunby Zono. And that basically brings us to an end for the first week. Thank you very much for sticking with us. We'll be back again next week. Keep an eye on the site and Twitter. But until next time, it's ciao for now.